Hello, I'm Jimmy Joseph, and this is my open source contribution project. For my open source contribution, I worked on MonkeyType, which is a typing practice site. And this is the GitHub repository from MonkeyType, and it features a README for new participants, a code of conduct that describes pull request standards, and the code is structured so that all the front end and back end are in the associated folders, and then all the associated packages are in the expected folders. So my contribution mainly dealt with front end parsing, and the issue that my contribution aimed to solve was to replace a deprecated method that had issues with type safety. So the issue which was raised was to replace all instances of the JSON.parse method with parse.json with schema. So to solve this issue, I began by making a clone of the repository. And through this repository, I began to then identify all instances of the JSON.parse. And after I identified the instance of JSON.parse, I began updating it with the respective parse method. So I made three different commits to fix this parsing issue. And in the first commit, I first imported the helper function, the helper method known as parse with schema, and I imported it as parse JSON with schema to meet the issue naming scheme. And after I imported the parse JSON with schema, I replaced the previous JSON.parse line with a parse JSON with schema, which was in line with the standard set by the monkey type team. So if we take a look at the parse with schema function on the right side, we can see that it takes in the string as the first input, and then the second input is a schema which it would match to. And the schema was conducted with the Zod library, which I'll explain later. So in the first update, I updated the list.typescript file, and this TypeScript file was replaced with the parse.json with schema method, replacing the previous JSON.parse input. And I imported the library to make sure that it runs smoothly. For the second file, in the second commit, it was a similar concept where I imported the correct utilities, and then following that, I replaced the previous JSON.parse value, and I replaced it with the parse.json with schema method. And notice how both values are the same here. The state value is the same input, just parsed into the parse JSON with schema helper function. And same thing with the schema. It's obtained from the previous schema that was already existing. So no major changes were made other than replacing the method used to ensure type safety. And finally, in the third and final uh, commit, this one was actually the most complex of the three because not only did I have to import the libraries and do a replacement as before, but I also had to import the Zod library, which is used for schema matching. So Zod was the hardest part of the contribution in that not only did I have to identify the correct usage of the Zod library, I had to make sure that it was in standard with how the project already utilized it. Luckily, my formatting was not an issue because the prettier format was automatically applied to any commits applied to this repository. So that was one challenge that I encountered, but because it automatically is formatted with the prettier formatting, I was able to navigate that smoothly. So in this instance, after I imported the Zod library as Z, I set up a schema where an array of strings were set up. And therefore, in the parse JSON with schema method, not only does it match the string, but it also matches it as an array of strings. Therefore, the type can be guaranteed when it's passing through this helper function. Overall, I'd say that the project went as expected. I didn't encounter any major roadblocks other than the Zod library, but once I found out the documentation on Zod.dev, it was relatively simple. And in the future, I would definitely try to contact one of the project coordinators to figure that out sooner, because I did spend a while figuring out the Zod library and making sure that my my array of strings were set up correctly. And now as a test, I will run the monkey type site locally. And as you can see, it opens in localhost 3000, and I can use the site as correctly used. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you for watching.